You know, one of the hardest truths to accept is that loneliness doesn't always mean something is missing. It can mean something is being made ready. But we live in a culture that equates waiting with weakness, that says if you're alone for too long, something must be wrong with you. We've been conditioned to see love as something we must chase, capture, or prove ourselves worthy of. But the truth is, God doesn't operate on that kind of transaction. He isn't watching you ache for connection and withholding love to punish you. He's aligning time, character, and intention to God's timing is not an emotional reaction to our tears. It's a sovereign rhythm, often misunderstood, but always purposeful. Sometimes we interpret his silence as abandonment when it's actually preparation. What we call a delay is often divine synchronization. You see, God is not just preparing someone for you, He's preparing someone who can hold you, not just romantically, but spiritually and emotionally. That takes time, that takes divine wisdom, and most importantly, that takes your cooperation. Because no matter how ready you think you are to love, you cannot bypass the soul work that makes you ready to receive love in its highest form. Philosophically, love is not the absence of loneliness, it's the presence of understanding. And the truth is, many of us are searching for love with a fractured understanding of ourselves. We want someone to see us, but we've never stopped to really see ourselves. That's why God often leads us into isolation, not as punishment, but as instruction. He knows that if He gives us a good thing too soon, we might ruin it. We might confuse companionship with completion, and that's dangerous. Because when you look to another human being to fill a void only God can occupy, you don't find healing, you find dependence disguised as intimacy. Psychologically, this is about emotional regulation and identity. The mind needs clarity to love well. You can't love from a place of chaos. You can't hear someone else's heart when your own thoughts are still screaming at you. God will strip distractions not to deprive you, but to stabilize you. He'll remove what's familiar, not because He wants to hurt you, but because He knows the familiar is often what's been holding you back. It is in that space of divine discomfort where real transformation happens. That's where self awareness is born. And from that self awareness comes the capacity to love without fear, without pretending, and without performance. Now, here's where faith becomes psychological strength. Trusting God's timeline teaches you emotional resilience. It forces you to surrender control, and in doing so, you learn that you are not fragile, you are becoming fortified. That shift from needing someone to validate you to being content with God's process is the pivot that changes everything. Because when you wait well, you become someone who no longer needs love to rescue you. You become someone who can recognize real love when it comes. You begin to see that being alone is not the same as being unloved. There is a difference, and when God is leading, He's not just taking you to someone, you're being drawn towards someone who's also being prepared in parallel. Someone who has been shaped not by fantasy or impulse, but by discipline, maturity, and a heart that has learned to see through God's eyes, not just human longing. When you get there, when the connection finally happens, it won't feel like a dramatic climax. It won't be chaos or confusion. It'll feel like confirmation, like clarity. It'll feel like two puzzle pieces that fit, not because they forced each other, but because they were always shaped to align. So if you're in a season of loneliness right now, don't curse it, don't rush it. Let it do its work in you. Let it refine your vision, not distort your worth. Because love that comes too early can feel like fulfillment, but end in fragmentation. Love that is sent by God, it comes with timing that protects you, not just connects you. And when it arrives, it won't ask you to earn it. It will recognize you. It will meet you. So don't confuse divine timing with divine silence. God is not late. He is just on time for the version of you that's finally ready to be truly loved. There's a powerful kind of peace that comes when you realize you don't have to be found to be loved. That someone doesn't need to see the edited version of your life to value the essence of who you are. When God is the one orchestrating your connections, He doesn't send people who fall in love with your performance. He sends someone who responds to your presence, someone whose spirit already recognizes what God has placed within you. You don't have to become anything other than who you already are in Him. That's a radical idea in a world constantly demanding that we fix ourselves to be worthy. Fix our looks, fix our status, fix our. But true, enduring love, the kind that God aligns, isn't built on presentation, it's built on perception. It sees beyond behavior and into being. And this is important. The right person doesn't come to complete you, they come to honor the wholeness God is building in you. Psychologically speaking, we're wired to seek safety in connection. But safety doesn't come from someone's presence alone, it comes from their perception of us. You can be surrounded by people and still feel invisible if no one truly sees you. So, the kind of person God brings into your life is not just someone who hears your words, but someone who listens, someone who sees the strength in your silence, the beauty in your becoming. They don't just love your potential, they love your process. That's why you don't have to manufacture compatibility. You don't have to shrink your voice to avoid conflict or overextend your empathy to earn affection. Love is divinely aligned. It doesn't ask you to become worthy, it simply recognizes that you already are. Philosophically, this touches the heart of what love really means. If love is just attraction, it will fade. If love is just convenience, it will fail. But if love is rooted in the soul, if it's born from the same source that shaped your spirit, then it will endure. God is not bringing someone to you who falls in love with a fantasy. He's leading you towards someone who has already been loving you in prayer, in thought, in principle. Someone who has learned how to love themselves through God's lens, and because of that, they are equipped to love you the same way. This love isn't accidental, it's intentional, and because it's intentional, it doesn't demand performance. You don't need to earn its attention. There's no need to hide your wounds behind a polished exterior or bury your story because you're afraid it's too much. The person God is leading you to is already carrying a level of spiritual maturity that allows them to see your brokenness not as baggage, but as evidence of your becoming. To them, your pain isn't a liability, it's part of your language, a language they can speak. That kind of recognition is rare. It's more than chemistry, it's resonance. It's when two hearts don't just beat in sync, they understand each other without the need for explanation. It's when the energy is not loud but present, not intense but deep. It feels like home, not because it's perfect, but because it's true. And let's not pretend this kind of connection is common. It's not. That's why God protects it. That's why the wait feels long. Because what He's preparing you for is not something you can swipe into existence. It's something that only comes when you are no longer desperate to be chosen, but fully at peace with who you are. When you've stopped asking, will they love me? And started asking, do I even know who I am without needing to be loved? Because here's the truth, the right person will not just love what's visible. They will love the version of you that the world has never applauded, but God has always affirmed. They will love the thoughts you were too afraid to speak. They will hold space for your doubts without rushing to fix them. And most of all, they will not be confused about you because God is not the author of confusion. He is the author of clarity, so don't rush the journey. Don't compromise for closeness. Wait for the one who doesn't fall in love with your image, but with your imprint. The one who sees your worth before you even speak it, who isn't intimidated by your growth, and who doesn't require you to dim your light to make them feel secure. Because when God leads you to someone who already loves you, it won't be about striving, it will be about seeing. And you will finally understand love was never something you had to earn. It was something that was being aligned all along. So don't chase visibility, cultivate authenticity. Because the one who is meant for you doesn't need to be convinced. They just need to find what God already placed in you. One of the deepest illusions we are taught, sometimes even in subtle, well meaning ways, is that love must be earned, that we must somehow prove ourselves worthy of being chosen. We internalize this early through conditional praise, through broken relationships, through moments where we were only celebrated when we were convenient. So, what happens? We learn to perform, we learn to overcompensate, to silence our needs, to reshape our identities just enough to be accepted. But here's the truth that many of us miss for far too long. You don't have to prove your worth to be loved. The moment love becomes something you must win, it stops being love and starts becoming a transaction. And God never designed relationships to function like contracts. He designed them as covenants. A covenant doesn't say, you'll be loved when you're enough. A covenant says, you are loved because you are. The kind of love God aligns in your life won't come with performance metrics. It won't require you to wear emotional armor. It invites you to show up fully, flaws and all, and still be seen, not just looked at. Psychologically, this touches on something profound, the difference between attachment and an authenticity. When we feel we must prove ourselves to be loved, we create attachments based on anxiety, not trust. These kinds of attachments, they keep us performing, adjusting, censoring who we are, always wondering, am I too much? Am I enough? That's emotional imprisonment disguised as affection. And it's exhausting. Real love, love that God orchestrates, frees you. It lets you exhale. It says, you don't have to entertain me to be kept. I value the truth of you, not just the best version of you. Now let's talk about vulnerability. Vulnerability is not weakness, it is emotional honesty. It is courage in its rawest form. And it is the gateway to real intimacy. But here's the catch, you can't be vulnerable when you're busy performing. You can't build a healthy relationship when your self-worth is tied to someone else's response to you. That is not love, that's dependence, that's survival. And God wants more for you than survival. He wants restoration. There's a philosophy in many spiritual traditions that emphasizes the concept of intrinsic value, that worth is not assigned, it is inherent. You are not valuable because someone chooses you. You are valuable because you exist in divine image. If you forget that, you will spend your life chasing acceptance you already deserve. But when you remember it, you stop trying to be impressive and you start being whole. And something shifts when you stop asking, what do I need to do to be loved? And start asking, why do I believe I'm not already enough? That's where the healing begins. That's where you take your power back, because worth isn't about achievements, aesthetics, or even emotional availability. Worth is about identity. And identity rooted in God is unshakable. It doesn't bend to rejection. It doesn't collapse under. It stands even when others walk away, because it was never standing on them to begin with. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't grow. Growth is necessary. Emotional maturity is essential. But growth is not about changing yourself to be accepted. It's about becoming yourself so deeply that the right people can recognize you. And those people, the ones God leads you to, they don't love you for your highlight reel. They love you in the pauses, in the tension, in the spaces where you feel unsure. They hold you with grace, not conditions. That kind of love doesn't happen overnight, but it does exist. And it's worth waiting for. When you truly internalize that you don't have to prove yourself, you start to show up differently. You walk into rooms without needing to be the loudest voice. You sit across from someone and let silence speak without rushing to fill it. You stop oversharing as a way to earn empathy. You simply be. And in that being, you discover that the most magnetic version of you is the one that's most honest, not the one trying hardest. So if you're tired of performing, stop. If you're exhausted from being someone you think they'll love, pause. You were never meant to be a character in someone else's script. You were meant to be the whole story, just as you are. Because when the right person comes, they won't be drawn to your mask, they'll be moved by your truth. And in that moment, you'll understand the greatest freedom isn't being loved for who you pretend to be. It's being loved without ever needing to pretend at all. One of the most misunderstood aspects of divine love is that it doesn't just feel good, it forms you. And that means sometimes God's love looks like protection in the form of rejection. It looks like closed doors, unanswered texts, and relationships that fall apart right when you thought they were finally coming together. It's painful, yes, confusing, absolutely. But when you step back and see the bigger picture, you realize God wasn't being cruel. He was keeping you from settling for less than you were made for. You see, we often mistake compatibility for calling. Just because two people connect doesn't mean they were designed to continue. Sometimes the wrong people feel right for a while simply because they reflect our unhealed patterns back to us. We're not always drawn to what's good for us, we're drawn to what feels familiar. And until that pattern is broken, we will keep attracting versions of the same wound over and over, calling it love, calling it fate, when in fact it's just unhealed trauma playing dress up. God, in His wisdom, doesn't just lead us toward love, He leads us away from dysfunction. But here's where we struggle: that kind of guidance doesn't always come with explanations. We don't always get closure. Sometimes the only thing we get is silence, and that silence, if you're not rooted in trust, can sound like abandonment. But what if it's not? What if the unanswered prayer was the answer? What if God's no wasn't a punishment, but a redirection? Philosophically, there's a profound truth here. Protection isn't always obvious in real time. The ego wants affirmation. It wants quick results. It wants certainty. But the soul longs for truth, for safety, for alignment. And when God is leading, He always answers the soul, even if it disrupts the ego. So yes, the relationship may have ended, yes, they may have left, but maybe they had to. Maybe if they stayed, you would have spent years negotiating your worth, dimming your light, just to keep the peace. And maybe God loved you too much to let you lose yourself just to be loved by someone else. Psychologically, settling often comes from scarcity, from the fear that maybe this is the best we'll get, that if we let go, no one else will come. And that mindset isn't neutral, it's dangerous. It keeps us stuck in cycles of low expectation and emotional starvation, calling it commitment. But here's the reality: when you believe that love is rare, you'll accept poor treatment as a normal price to pay for companionship. But when you believe that love is abundant in God, you stop negotiating your standards to fit someone else's capacity. That's why God's guidance feels so disruptive at times, because He's not just leading you to someone who loves you, He's leading you to someone who can handle you. Someone who doesn't flinch at your truth. Someone who doesn't require you to dilute your purpose so they can feel secure. That kind of relationship doesn't limit you, it liberates you, it doesn't shrink you, it expands you. That's what divine alignment looks like. You grow together, not in spite of each other, but because of each other, but growth requires space. And sometimes God has to clear the room before He brings in the right people. He has to strip away what's convenient to make room for what's consecrated. And in the moment, that feels like loss, it feels like grief, but from a higher lens, it's grace. Because once you've tasted love that doesn't require you to betray yourself, you'll never go back to pretending again. You'll start to recognize peace not as silence but as clarity. You'll stop asking, will they stay? And start asking, do I feel safe to be myself when they do? This is where faith meets discernment, where you stop romanticizing potential and start honoring patterns, where you stop making excuses for why it almost works and start choosing the kind of love that actually does. Because when God is in the equation, love doesn't come with chaos, it comes with confirmation. It might still be challenging, yes, it might require effort, but it will never ask you to become less just to be kept.